The scent of cypress shavings clung to my clothes, a sweet, honest perfume. My hands, once precise instruments of theft, now moved with a different kind of precision, guiding a block plane across a length of polished oak. The wood surrendered in delicate curls, whispering promises of a smooth finish. This workshop, tucked behind the main street of a town forgotten by most maps, was my sanctuary. Here, the hum of the planer replaced the scream of alarms. The gentle rasp of sandpaper silenced the frantic beat of my own heart in a dark room. For 5 years, I had built this quiet life, piece by painstaking piece. Custom furniture, intricate joinery, the satisfaction of seeing a raw timber transform into something beautiful and lasting. No more fleeting shadows, no more walls of steel, no more dance with the precipice. The ghosts of past glories, or failures depending on how one measured, were kept at bay by the insistent rhythm of honest labor. I had earned this peace, clawed my way out of the quicksand of my former existence. I had promised myself and Lena that the old Kai was dead. The workshop clock, a sturdy brass affair I'd salvaged and repaired, ticked towards midnight. A final pass, a wipe with a linseed-oiled rag, and the oak gleamed under the bare bulb, catching the light like liquid honey. My fingers traced the grain, feeling the cool, smooth surface. It was perfect, a small victory earned with calloused hands and a clear conscience. Then the phone shrieked. Lena never called this late, never. I messed up so bad. The quiet life evaporated, dissolving like mist in a sudden wind. My grip on the phone tightened until my knuckles blanched. Where are I? What happened? A ragged sob tore through her. I don't know what to do. He's going to hurt me, Kai. I swear he is. Who? Tell me where I am, Lena, now. My voice was a low growl, the old instinct, sharp and immediate, pushing its way through the carefully constructed calm. Near the border crossing at the old customs house. I think he's watching. I don't know what to do. His voice broke, dissolving into a desperate wail. Please, Kai, please. The words hit me like a physical blow. My mind raced, piecing together the fragments of her fear. Stay put. Don't move. Don't talk to anyone. I'm coming. Don't hang up. I didn't wait for a reply, just shoved the phone into my pocket, the line still open, her faint, trembling breaths a terrifying soundtrack. My hands moved on their own, grabbing my jacket, keys, a small, heavy wrench from my toolbox. The quiet peace of the workshop was a distant memory, replaced by the thrum of adrenaline, a familiar, unwelcome current. My old pickup, usually a slow, reliable workhorse, felt like a rocket eating up the miles. Each turn of the wheel was a prayer. Each passing signpost a cruel reminder of the distance between me and my sister. The world outside the windshield was a canvas of inkai black, punctuated only by the weak gleam of my headlights. My thoughts were a frantic storm. Lena, danger, the border crossing checkpoint at 2 a.m. What kind of trouble could drag her to such a place, at such an hour? I found her huddled in the skeletal shadow of a defunct customs booth. Its windows long since shattered, its paint peeling like sunburnt skin. The air was frigid, biting. The official border crossing checkpoint at 2 a.m. a mile down the road glowed with its sterile, unwelcoming lights, a stark contrast to the utter desolation surrounding us. She flinched, a raw, animalistic fear in her eyes. It's me. I rest safe now. Tell me everything. She shook her head, unable to speak, her teeth chattering. I pulled her into my arms, holding her tight, feeling the tremors rack her small frame. The familiar scent of her cheap perfume, mixed with something acrid fear, maybe, or the stale air of a place too long abandoned. We need to go, she finally choked out, her voice barely audible against my chest. He knows I called. He said he'd find me. Who, Lena? Who is he? My voice was low, laced with a steel I hadn't used in years. I borrowed money, a lot of money. I thought I could pay it back. I was stupid, Kai, the serpent. He dealt in favors, fear, and unforgiving debts. How much, Lena? I asked, the words tasting like ash. She swallowed hard, her gaze fixed on something beyond me, something only he could see. 50,000 and, it's overdue. He said if I didn't have it by morning, he'd make an example of me. 50,000. It was a sum that might as well have been $1 million, more than I had in my legitimate accounts, more than I could earn in a year of honest work. The quiet life, the sanctuary of sawdust and oak, crumbled around me. My sister, my only family, was caught in its coils. The old Kai, the one I had buried, stirred in his grave. He was waking up. The cold numbers from the previous night still clawed at the edges of my mind, a phantom ache. 50,000. The sum was a leviathan, dragging me back into the deep I had fought so hard to escape. the scent of sawdust. The honest grain of wood under my fingers felt like a memory already fading, replaced by the metallic tang of fear. Lena. Her name was a raw whisper on my tongue, the fuel for a desperate courage I hadn't known I still possessed. I had to face him. The old pickup, usually a symbol of my hard-won freedom, now felt like a hearse, carrying me towards a grave I couldn't yet see. My hands, calloused from sanding and shaping, trembled slightly on the wheel, a tremor I fought to suppress. This wasn't about the money anymore. It was about the blood that ran in my veins, the promise I had made to myself and to her. The coordinates led me to the edge of the world, or so it felt. The border-crossing checkpoint at 2 a.m. was a skeletal structure under the stark, unforgiving glow of floodlights. Concrete barriers, chain-link fences topped with razor wire, and a single, squat building stood sentinel against the vast, empty night. A gust rattled the truck, a shiver down my spine. This place, designed to separate one land from another, now felt like the dividing line between my two lives. They moved with a practiced, predatory ease. My gaze swept over the desolate expanse, searching for any other sign of life, but found none. The serpent. He stepped into the light, not from the building, but from a sleek, black sedan that had materialized silently behind the checkpoint structure. He wasn't overtly large, but his presence filled the space, a quiet, coiled power. He wore a tailored suit, a stark contrast to the gritty surroundings, a viper in silk. I came, he observed, his lips barely moving. No surprise, no welcome, just a statement of fact. His words were polished stones, each one weighted with unspoken threat. Lena, I managed, my voice rougher than I intended. The name was a plea and a challenge, a testament to why I was here. He raised a hand, a dismissive gesture. My sister is impetuous, a common flaw in the young. She dabbled where he should not have, borrowed what he could not repay. 50,000, as I know. He paused, letting the figure hang in the frigid air between us. A trifle, really. That is why we are having this discussion, Kai. My sister's foolishness has presented an opportunity. His gaze sharpened, boring into me. I see, I know I. Not the man who smells of wood polish and honest sweat. He knew. He didn't just know of me, he knew me. The past, the ghost I thought I had buried under layers of sawdust and sunlight, stood naked before him. He saw the flicker of recognition, the sudden horror in my eyes. The legend of the silent hand, he continued, his voice a low, almost hypnotic hum. A man who could open anything, a man who disappeared, only to be found sanding pine in a forgotten workshop. He chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. Such a waste of talent. My hands balled into fists, nails digging into my palms. The humiliation, the rage, warred with the primal fear for Lena. I have a task, Kai, the serpent stated, cutting through my internal storm. One that requires your particular expertise. Succeed and your sister's debt vanishes. Her slate clean, fail or refuse. His eyes narrowed, smile vanishing, and her impulsiveness will have consequences far greater than a mere financial burden. Consequences that will be permanent. The air grew heavy, thick with unspoken menace. My mind raced, searching for an escape, a loophole, anything, but there was nothing. Only his unflinching gaze and the silent, watchful figures flanking him. What is it? I asked, the words forced from my throat, tasting of ash. He leaned forward slightly, as if sharing a profound secret. The Blackwood Vault. The name hit me like a physical shockwave. The Blackwood. It was the Everest of safecracking, a challenge no living man had ever conquered or even dared to attempt. It wasn't just a vault. It was a legend, guarded by layers of cutting-edge tech and archaic, brutal defenses. That's impossible, I breathed, the word a desperate plea. The serpent merely regarded me, his expression unreadable. Nothing is impossible for man with sufficient motivation. And your motivation, Kai, is undeniable. Your sister's life or the Blackwood Vault. He gestured vaguely towards the desolate border, then back to me. A simple choice, really. Return to your quiet life and let Lena face the music, or become the man you once were for one last impossible dance. My gaze flickered to the distant lights of the city, the life I had built, now crumbling to dust. Her laugh, her defiant spirit, her reckless heart. There was no choice. Not really. The quiet sanctuary I had fought for was an illusion, shattered by a debt I couldn't pay and a past that refused to stay buried. My hands unclenched, my jaw tightening with a new bitter determination, stirred back to life. When, I said, my voice steady, stripped of all emotion save a fierce, quiet anger. When do we start? The serpent's smile returned, a slow, predatory unveiling. Excellent, Kai. The serpent always finds a way. The city's pulse. A dull thrum against the soles of my worn boots was the only witness to my quiet pilgrimage. I moved through the skeletal shadows of midnight, a ghost among the sleeping avenues, drawn by an invisible thread to the monolith of the Blackwood building. Its facade, a gleaming obsidian slab even in the scant light, rose like a dare against the bruised canvas of the sky. My eyes, once trained to discern the faintest tremor of a tumbler's dance, now scanned for a different kind of rhythm, the steady, unforgiving beat of modern security. Infrared sensors, a constellation of watchful lenses, hummed silently on every corner, their red eyes blinking. Reinforced steel doors, the kind that scoffed at conventional tools, guarded the ground-level entrances, flanked by visible patrols. I saw the glint of a flashlight, the silhouette of a guard, moving with practiced indifference, a human cog in a formidable machine. This wasn't just a building, it was a fortress, a vault within a vault designed to be impregnable. Each layer of defense I observed, each hardened surface and glinting camera, pressed down on my chest, a physical weight. The serpent had truly chosen an impossible task, a final, crushing test of my forgotten skills. My legitimate life, built brick by careful brick, felt fragile now, threatened by the looming shadow of this impossible challenge and the specter of Lena's debt. My sister's face, etched with fear, flickered behind my eyelids, a silent plea that fueled the icy resolve in my gut. This wasn't for me, it was for her, and that made the impossible merely difficult. I circled the perimeter twice, a predator studying its prey, noting the patterns of the patrols, the blind spots, the subtle shifts in ambient noise. The building seemed to breathe, a living entity of steel and glass, whispering a cold challenge. My mind, long dormant to these calculations, stirred, recalibrating, cataloging every detail. The scale of it was staggering, a Gordian knot of security. I would need more than just my old hands. I would need eyes, ears, and minds that understood the digital currents of this new world. Sealers. The decision to seek him out felt like tearing open an old wound, but Lena's face demanded it. My journey led me far from the city's heart, through winding country roads that eventually dissolved into the desolate landscape bordering the old industrial zones. The drive stretched, hours swallowed by the night, until the stark, utilitarian lights of the border crossing checkpoint at 2 a.m. materialized out of the gloom. The air here was heavy with the weight of unseen lines, of boundaries and their transgression. I slowed, my vehicle merging into the sparse queue of trucks and late-night travelers. It was a place of transit, of fleeting encounters, a fitting gateway to the ghost I was chasing. A further half-hour of driving brought me to a cluster of disused warehouses, their corrugated iron skins rusting under the moon. One, however, glowed with a faint, warm light from a single window. I found him amidst a symphony of grinding metal and the sharp tang of oil. Sealers, older, his hair streaked with more silver than I remembered, was hunched over an engine block, a wrench in his grease-stained hand. He didn't look up immediately, the rhythmic clink of metal against metal filling the space. When he finally did, his eyes, the color of stormy seas, narrowed, recognition dawning slow and hard. "Kai," he breathed, the name a rusty hinge. His voice, once a conspiratorial murmur, now held the gravelly texture of years. He slowly straightened, wiping his hands on a rag, his movements deliberate, wary. "I thought the earth had swallowed you whole. Or perhaps the law finally caught up." "Neither," I replied, my own voice rougher than I intended. "I'm still here." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "A surprise. Most of us don't get second acts, or if we do, we don't invite the past back in." He tossed the rag onto a workbench, the clatter echoing. "So, what brings the ghost of Blackwood back to the land of the living? Surely not a friendly visit." His gaze was piercing, seeking the truth beneath my practiced calm. "You look like a man staring down a barrel, Kai. What fresh hell have you stumbled into?" I chose my words carefully, the burden of Lena's plight heavy on my tongue. "I need information, Sealers, old contacts, a way in." His eyes hardened. "A way in where and for what? The last time you came looking for a way in, half the city was on high alert, and I spent a month looking over my shoulder." He walked closer, his presence radiating an unspoken warning. "You got out clean, Kai. A miracle. Don't throw it away for some phantom score, especially not if it involves him." The unspoken name of the serpent hung in the air between us, a toxic vapor. "It's not for me," I admitted, the lie tasting like ash yet necessary. "It's complicated. Someone I care about is in deep. I need a specialist. Someone who can get past modern defenses, the kind that laugh at a safe cracker with a stethoscope. Silas studied me for a long moment, his gaze unwavering, searching for the crack in my resolve. He must have seen the desperation, the quiet fire beneath the calm. He sighed, a weary exhalation that seemed to carry the weight of all our shared mistakes. A ghost in the machine, you mean? Someone who lives in the wires and the code. He walked back to his workbench, picking up a small, intricate circuit board, turning it over in his calloused fingers. There's only one name that comes to mind, Kai, and you won't like it. A phantom. They say Ghost can slip through firewalls like smoke, rewrite reality with a keyboard, but Ghost is temperamental, unpredictable, as likely to help you as to set your systems on fire just for the sport of it. He looked at me, a grim warning in his eyes. Ghost doesn't work for money, Kai, not really. Ghost works for the challenge, for the sheer audacity of it. And they don't take kindly to being told what to do. Getting them on board will be a heist in itself, and far more dangerous than any vault. My jaw tightened, another layer to peel back, another impossible personality to navigate. The path ahead stretched into a labyrinth, each turn more treacherous than the last. But the image of Lena, caught in the serpent's coils, pushed me forward. Where do I find them? I inquired, my voice steady, betraying none of the apprehension swirling within. Silas hesitated, then pointed a greasy finger towards a faded map tacked to the wall, indicating a remote, forgotten corner of the digital underworld. Last I heard, Ghost was operating out of an abandoned factory district deep in the old city's industrial sprawl. Good luck, Kai, you'll need it, more than you know. The chill wind, a phantom hand, traced the curve of my spine as I waited at the border crossing checkpoint at 2 a.m. The air hung heavy with the scent of diesel and the metallic tang of exhaust, a fitting prelude to the shadows I sought. Headlights carved fleeting arcs through the pre-dawn gloom, illuminating the stark concrete barriers, the watchful glint of surveillance lenses. This was Ghost's chosen theater, a place of transit and anonymity, where faces blurred and identities shifted with the shifting fog. My breath plumed, a fleeting cloud against the vast, indifferent sky. I had sent the coded signal hours ago, a relic from a past I swore I'd abandoned, and now I waited, a knot of old anxieties tightening in my gut. Ghost, a whisper in the digital ether, a phantom in the flesh, had always been a master of vanishing acts. It was a skill I now desperately needed. A nondescript sedan, its engine a low thrum, pulled up 50 yards away, its lights doused. No sudden movements, no dramatic flair. Just a silent arrival, a subtle declaration. A figure emerged, cloaked in an oversized jacket, hood drawn low, blending with the night itself. They moved with an almost ethereal quiet, their steps barely disturbing the gravel. Kai, the voice, a low current of static, cut through the quiet. It was genderless, devoid of inflection, a sound I hadn't heard in years. Ghost, I replied, my own voice rougher than I intended. The years had etched new lines on my face, but the familiar tension of these meetings remained. They stopped a few feet from me, the hood still obscuring their features. Only the faint gleam of eyes, sharp and assessing, was visible. You're a ghost yourself these days, or so I heard. Quiet life, legitimate. What brings the dead back to haunt the living? A debt, I stated, keeping my gaze steady. One I can't pay alone, a vault. A soft, almost imperceptible scoff. Vaults are your specialty, not mine. My specialty is making them irrelevant. This one, it's different, Blackwood. The name hung in the air, a bell tolling in the desolate landscape. I saw a flicker in those hidden eyes, a spark of recognition, perhaps even a sliver of professional curiosity. Blackwood, Ghost repeated, the word a low hum. Impossible. A legend whispered in the dark corners. Not a job for an old dog like you. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't. I need you for the systems. No one else can get past what they have. Last time, Ghost began, the static in their voice deepening, your different job left me picking glass out of my hair for a week, running from every authority from here to the coast. You vanished. It was true in part. The job had gone sideways and I had made a choice, a hard one, to save myself, knowing the others would scatter. I regret that, I said, the words heavy. It was a mess. This isn't that, this is personal. The stakes are higher than just money. My family is caught in it. Ghost was silent for a long moment, the only sound the distant whine of a truck on the highway. Family, they finally echoed, the word devoid of warmth. A weakness or a leverage point. Which is it for I? Both, I admitted, my jaw tight. I need to open the digital gates, Ghost. To blind their cameras, deafen their microphones, make us invisible for a window, however brief. No one else has my touch, my artistry, and I swear this time no one gets left behind. I'll make sure of it. Another long pause, the tension a tangible thing between us. I watch the hidden face, searching for any sign, any crack in the impassive facade. Finally, a sigh barely audible. The Blackwood Vault. It's a suicide mission, Kai, but the legend, it's tempting. To say I was the one who saw it fall, what's the pay? Enough to disappear forever, and a clean slate. I'll handle the muscle, the planning, the extraction. I just get us in and out of their digital fortress. A clean slate, Ghost mused, the words tasting like ash. A fairy tale, but I'll admit the Blackwood has always been a siren song. One last dance, Kai, but my price is non-negotiable. And if I even think about leaving me exposed again, I'll make sure every authority knows exactly where to find I. The sedan's engine purred to life, and it slipped away as silently as it had arrived, leaving me alone once more with the biting wind and the weight of the impossible task ahead. One piece of the puzzle, painstakingly secured. My next stop was a grimy, oil-stained garage tucked away in an industrial district, the kind of place where engines roared at ungodly hours and the scent of burnt rubber clung to the air. Jax, a blur of motion and instinct behind the wheel, was the only one I trusted for the getaway. I found him beneath a raised chassis, a wrench in hand, his face smeared with grease, his eyes, when they met mine, holding a familiar spark of mischief and a hint of weary resignation. Well, Jax drawled, wiping his hands on a rag. Look what the cat dragged in. Thought you'd retired to a life of gardening and tax returns, Kai. Wish I had, I grunted, leaning against a stack of worn tires. I need you, Jax, for old time's sake. He pushed himself out from under the car, his movements fluid, economical. Old time's sake usually involves a lot of noise, a lot of speed, and a lot of trouble. What's the score? Blackwood. Jax's smile, usually quick to appear, faltered. His eyes narrowed, a flicker of genuine surprise crossing his features. The Blackwood? You're joking. That's a legend, a bedtime story for wannabe hotshots. Nobody touches the Blackwood. I have to, I answered simply, the weight of Lena's predicament pressing down on me. It's the only way. I need the fastest hands, the sharpest instincts. I need you to drive the Ghost. He considered me, his gaze shrewd, searching. You look like hell, Kai, and you wouldn't be here unless you were truly desperate. What's the real story? I couldn't tell him everything, not yet. Not about the serpent, not about Lena's debt. It's personal, I repeated, the same phrase I'd used with Ghost. A high-stakes retrieval. The kind where a second means the difference between walking away and spending the rest of your life watching the sky through bars, or worse. Jax ran a hand through his perpetually messy hair. High stakes, fast car, getaway that'll make history. Sounds like my kind of trouble, but I'm not cheap, Kai, not anymore, and I want to know the whole picture before we roll. You'll get it, I promised, once everyone's in place. For now, just know this, it's the biggest score and the most dangerous. Are you in? He grinned, a flash of white in the dim light of the garage. Always, Kai, always, 2 pieces. The crew was slowly, painfully coming together. It didn't stop, didn't overtly acknowledge me, but its slow, deliberate pass felt like a whisper in the dark. A reminder, the serpent was watching. My time was running out. The cold dread that had settled in my bones after the dark sedan's slow crawl refused to dissipate. It clung to me like a shroud, a premonition of trials yet to come. But there was no time for premonitions now. Lena's freedom, her very life, hung in the balance, a fragile thread held by my unsteady hands. My workshop, a concrete cavern tucked away on the edge of the industrial district, transformed into a war room. Blueprints of the Blackwood Bank, meticulously sourced and painstakingly verified, covered the main workbench, illuminated by the harsh glare of a single overhead bulb. The air hummed with a nervous energy as my makeshift crew, the quiet, precise driver, the quick-witted tech specialist, the gruff, methodical demolitions expert gathered around, their faces etched with a mix of apprehension and grim determination. All right, I began, my voice a low rumble, tracing a finger across the labyrinthine floor plan. The vault is on the 3rd sublevel. Reinforced steel, multi-layered, pressure-sensitive floor seismic sensors, standard for a high-value target, but Blackwood takes it a step further. The tech specialist, a young woman whose nimble fingers could coax secrets from any circuit board, pointed to a section. Thermal imaging on the main corridor leading to the vault, movement sensors tied to a silent alarm. We'll need a full environmental bypass for that stretch. And the cameras. They're networked, but I've found a blind spot in the feed cycle, roughly 7 seconds every 12 minutes. Enough if we're precise. Precision is everything, I affirmed, my gaze sweeping over their faces. The main vault door is a 7-tumbler mechanism, custom-built. No two are alike. I'll handle that. My focus is on getting to it undisturbed. The demolitions expert, a man whose quiet demeanor belied his destructive expertise, leaned closer. The outer wall adjacent to the vault chamber. It's reinforced concrete, but I can set charges for a controlled breach. Minimal noise, maximum effect. We'll need a 20-minute window for placement and detonation, and then another 5 to clear the debris before the air filters catch the dust. I nodded, absorbing their contributions, weaving them into the tapestry of the plan. The driver outlined the escape routes, identifying choke points and alternative paths. We mapped out every second, every step, every potential contingency. The intricate dance of movement, timing, and subterfuge began to take shape, a delicate symphony of calculated risks. Hours bled into one another, fueled by lukewarm coffee and the adrenaline of impending action. The vault, once an abstract legend, became a tangible beast, its weaknesses slowly exposed under our collective scrutiny. It was during my solitary review, long after the others had departed, their instructions clear, that the first tremor of unease rippled through me. I was cross-referencing a new schematic, recently acquired through a discreet contact, against the older blueprints. My eyes scanned the ventilation shafts, the power conduits, the forgotten spaces behind service panels, and then I saw it, not on the main vault schematics, but hidden within the sub-level utility plans, almost an afterthought. A single, unlabeled line leading from a rarely accessed maintenance shaft directly into the vault's outer wall. My breath hitched. It was a fiber optic cable, incredibly thin, almost invisible, routed through a conduit that was marked as redundant power supply. It wasn't connected to any alarm system I could identify. It wasn't a data line for the vault's security. It was a direct, covert feed, branching off from a small, concealed camera. A camera that wasn't on any of the official security schematics. I pulled up the bank's internal network layout, my fingers flying across the keyboard. The tech specialist had given me a backdoor, a ghost in the machine. I found the IP address associated with the redundant power supply conduit. It wasn't routing to the main security hub. It was feeding directly to an external, encrypted server, one I hadn't seen before. A server that belonged to a shell corporation. A ghost entity I vaguely recognized from my past dealings with the Serpent. A critical, overlooked security detail. This wasn't just a camera. This was a private eye, meticulously placed, feeding directly to him. It meant he would have a live, unfiltered view of every moment inside that vault. Every touch, every movement, every sequence. My presence, my method, my crew all laid bare. The plan, meticulously crafted, was now fundamentally flawed. I couldn't crack a vault with an audience of one, especially not that one. This required a last-minute alteration, a dangerous deviation to an already perilous path. My mind raced, searching for a countermeasure, a way to blind the Serpent's hidden eye without alerting him to my discovery. The cable was too deeply embedded to simply cut. I needed to feed it a loop, a false image, a frozen moment in time. But that would take specialized equipment. Equipment I didn't possess, and time I didn't have. As I dug deeper into the Shell Corporation's digital footprint, a second, colder wave washed over me. The external server wasn't just receiving a video feed. It was also linked to a secondary, far smaller data packet that seemed to originate from inside the vault itself, not from the camera. It was a unique identifier, a digital fingerprint, broadcast from a device I hadn't accounted for. Device that was emitting a signal, not just storing. This wasn't just a heist for money. This wasn't just about Lena's debt. The Serpent wasn't just having me crack the Blackwood vault. He was using me. The hidden camera, the external server, the emitting device. This was a setup, a frame, an elaborate, malicious trap. He wanted me to be seen, to be identified, to be the fall guy for something far greater than a simple theft. The vault wasn't the prize, I was. Or perhaps, what I did inside the vault was the true objective, an act that would be recorded, linked to me, and then used to trigger a larger, more sinister operation. The implications hit me with the force of a physical blow. Lena. If I walked into this, if I completed the job as planned, I wouldn't just be saving her from the serpent. I'd be handing myself over, tied with a bow, to whatever his true game was, and he would still have Lena. He'd have leverage forever. I needed to understand the emitting device, its frequency, its purpose. Reaching him would be dangerous, a journey into the very world I had sworn to abandon. My fingers, trembling slightly, pulled up a map, the northern route, a specific waypoint, a desolate stretch of highway. I marked the coordinates, the destination clear in my mind. The old, beat-up pickup truck would be the perfect disguise. I would have to drive through the night, cross into a different jurisdiction. My gaze lingered on a small icon on the digital map, a stark reminder of the journey ahead. I would be at the border crossing checkpoint at 2 a.m., a place of scrutiny and suspicion, a perfect stage for an unexpected complication. The game had just changed, and I was no longer playing by the serpent's rules. The city exhaled a final, weary breath as midnight bled into the early hours. Beneath its fading glow, the Blackwood building loomed, a fortress of dark stone and shadowed glass, a silent sentinel of secrets. My breath hitched, a phantom weight pressing down on my chest, the ghost of Lena's desperate plea a constant hum in my ears. This wasn't just a job, it was a reckoning. The air thrummed with a brittle anticipation as we moved, phantoms against the building's formidable silhouette. The entry specialist, a shadow figure of practiced grace, worked on the main service entrance. His tools, slender extensions of his will, danced against the reinforced steel, a symphony of soft clicks and barely audible scrapes. My eyes, honed by years of illicit observation, swept the perimeter. The heavy door groaned open, a reluctant sigh, revealing a cavernous service corridor. The first floor was a labyrinth of maintenance tunnels and storage rooms, a forgotten underworld beneath the polished corporate facade. We navigated it with practiced ease, our steps hushed, our movements economical. The tech specialist, a whiz with circuits and signals, moved ahead, his tablet a beacon of green lines and glowing schematics, nullifying security nodes before we even brushed against their invisible fields. He froze at the junction of two corridors, his tablet screen flickering with an angry red. New thermal array, not on the blueprints, it's sophisticated, military grade. My gut tightened. A military-grade thermal array. This wasn't just a simple upgrade, it was an active deterrent, designed to catch even the most seasoned infiltrators. He tapped furiously at his tablet, his brow furrowed in concentration. It's networked directly into the central grid. Any attempt to jam it will trigger a full lockdown. We have to physically disable it or find a blind spot. The driver's voice crackled through my earpiece, a low hiss of static against the hum of the building's ancient systems. Status, Kai. We're approaching the window for the border crossing checkpoint at 2 a.m. If we miss it, the next one's 3 hours out. Our timing is critical. We were bleeding precious minutes. This wasn't just a snag, it was a chasm. No, I told the driver, my eyes scanning the corridor, searching for any anomaly, any weakness in the thermal grid's unforgiving pattern. We have a problem. The muscle, a man of few words but considerable impatience, shifted his weight, the leather of his jacket creaking faintly. Problem? What kind of problem? We were told this place was old money, not Fort Knox. His voice was a low growl laced with thinly veiled frustration. This wasn't in the plan, Kai. Nothing ever is, I retorted, my gaze fixed on the glowing lines on the tech specialist's tablet. The array was a dense web, leaving no discernible gaps. It's a new installation, high frequency. That border crossing checkpoint at 2 a.m. Window slams shut. We don't wait, I snapped, turning to face him, my eyes hard. We adapt. That's always been the plan. The muscle's jaw tightened, but he held my gaze, a flicker of challenge in his eyes before he looked away, a grudging acceptance. There's a conduit, the tech specialist said suddenly, his voice sharp with discovery, pointing to a tiny, almost imperceptible line on his screen. An old ventilation shaft runs parallel to this corridor. Just above the array, it's tight, but it might get us past. My eyes narrowed, a ventilation shaft, but it was the only option. The array wasn't just an obstacle, it was a message. Someone had anticipated a highly skilled entry. This felt less like a random security upgrade and more like a deliberate trap. At least a test. How tight? I questioned, my mind already calculating the risks, the time it would take, the claustrophobia that would inevitably follow. Child's play for Kai, the tech specialist said, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk touching his lips. But the rest of us, it'll be a squeeze and loud. We'll have to be precise or we'll trip the acoustic sensors. I nodded, the plan forming sharp and clear in my mind. All right, the muscle and I go. I stay here, tech specialist, monitor the array. If anything blips, I warn us. Driver, keep that border crossing checkpoint at 2 a.m. Window open as long as I can, we're going in. The stakes had just ratcheted up, another notch tighter. The Blackwood building wasn't just a vault, it was a living, breathing entity fighting back. This wasn't just about Lena's debt, it was about outwitting a ghost. And the climb had just begun. The Blackwood vault loomed, a titan of reinforced steel and arcane mechanics. Its face, a circular behemoth of polished alloys, reflected the trembling beam of my headlamp, a distorted eye watching my every move. The air, thick with the scent of old money and latent power, seemed to press in, amplifying the faint rasp of my breath. Each breath was a prayer, a silent plea for the ghost of my old self to guide my hands. My fingers, once so adept at coaxing secrets from cold metal, now felt a strange blend of forgotten muscle memory and a new, desperate urgency. This wasn't just about the challenge. It was about Lena, about the coil of the serpent's debt tightening around her. The vault wasn't just a barrier, it was a promise, a crucible where my past and future would collide. I began with the outer layer, a series of complex pressure plates that hummed faintly under my touch. My custom-made scope, a delicate extension of my will, probed the microscopic gaps, mapping the internal mechanisms. The first tumbler clicked, a soft, almost inaudible sigh in the vast silence of the vault chamber. Then another, and another. My mind, usually a whirlwind of calculations, became a serene lake, reflecting only the intricate dance of pins and springs. I could almost feel the tumblers, the minute imperfections in their machining, the subtle resistance that spoke of their true positions. Hours bled into a timeless continuum. The initial tension had refined into a razor-sharp focus. My colleagues, a shadow at my back, moved with hushed efficiency, monitoring the perimeter, their presence a comforting anchor in the abyss of my concentration. I knew he watched, not with eyes, but with an intricate web of sensors and informants, eager to see me fail or worse, succeed just enough to serve his purpose. The main door, a final monumental barrier, presented itself. It was a multi-dial system, each dial a puzzle in itself, a symphony of traps and counter-traps. I moved with a dancer's grace, my tools an extension of my fingertips, coaxing the lock into submission. The massive door, sighing like an ancient beast, swung inward, revealing a cavernous space bathed in the soft glow of emergency lights. Inside, it wasn't the glittering hoard of jewels or stacks of currency I had half expected. Instead, the vault held rows of secure server racks, military-grade encrypted drives, and on a central pedestal, a single, unremarkable black briefcase. This was it, the serpent's true prize. I approached cautiously, my senses screaming. The air here was different, charged with a subtle hum of power. I opened the briefcase. Inside, nestled amongst layers of foam, was not a single item, but an array of seemingly mundane objects. A worn leather-bound ledger, a small, unmarked data chip, and a sheaf of meticulously organized documents, each bearing the letterhead of various shell corporations. My instructions were to retrieve a target, vaguely described as the item. But this was a trove. As my gaze swept over the documents, a name, a familiar one, jumped out at me. It wasn't just the serpent's name, but the name of a high-ranking official, a figure thought to be beyond reproach. This wasn't about money, this was about leverage, about dismantling an empire from within, or perhaps building a new one on its ashes. The serpent hadn't wanted me to steal anything valuable. He wanted me to destroy incriminating evidence that tied him to a deeper, more insidious network, or acquire the means to blackmail others. My objective had been a lie. "We have company," the lookout's voice crackled through my earpiece, sharp and urgent. "Two vehicles fast approach." This wasn't an escape, it was an ambush. The serpent knew. He had planned for this, for me to find these items, to be cornered with them. He wasn't just after the contents, he was after me. "Loose end. Grab the ledger and the chip," I ordered, my voice low but firm. "Leave the rest. We're not taking everything, we're taking what matters." As I secured the crucial items, the building shuddered with the impact of automatic gunfire against the outer walls. The serpent's enforcers were here, and they weren't subtle. "Get to the extraction point," I yelled, my voice cutting through the rising din. Now, we moved, a blur of motion through the labyrinthine corridors. Gunshots echoed, punctuated by the metallic whine of ricochets. My old instincts, dormant for so long, surged to the forefront. The weight of the ledger and the chip in my bag felt immense, a burden of truth. Our driver, a man of few words but swift action, had the engine running, a low growl anticipating the chase. We burst from a service exit directly into a hail of bullets. The vehicle's reinforced plating shrieked as rounds hammered against it. "Go, go, go," I roared, clambering into the passenger seat, pulling a spare weapon from under the dashboard. The driver floored it, the tires spitting gravel as we sped away from the Blackwood building, a fortress now under siege. Behind us, 2 black SUVs peeled out, their headlights glaring, their engines screaming in pursuit. "They're gaining," the driver grunted, wrestling the wheel as we careened around a sharp bend. I peered through the rear window, the glow of their headlights reflecting the grim determination on my face. This wasn't just a chase, it was a race against time, a desperate dash to escape the serpent's reach. My destination, a sliver of hope in this dark night, was the border. "Head for the border crossing checkpoint," I instructed, my voice calm despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "We need to hit it at 2 a.m. sharp, no detours." The driver nodded, his grip tight on the steering wheel. The rhythmic thump of bullets against our chassis was a macabre drumbeat, counting down the minutes until we reached the border crossing checkpoint at 2 a.m., a place that felt both like salvation and a final trap. The screech of tires was a symphony of survival, a ragged crescendo against the fading rhythm of gunfire. My breath hitched, a raw knot in my throat, as the battered sedan skidded to a halt just shy of the stark, illuminated archway. Ahead, the border crossing checkpoint at 2 a.m. loomed, a beacon of harsh white light against the bruised night sky. Behind us, the chaser's vehicle, a dark, menacing silhouette, seemed to melt back into the shadows, defeated for now by the sudden official glow. "Go," I rasped, pushing Lena forward. Her eyes, wide and luminous with terror, met mine. A silent plea, a desperate question hung in the frigid air between us. "He'll get you across. He knows the way." The driver, his face a mask of grim determination, nodded once, a quick, sharp motion. He reached back, pulling Lena into the passenger seat as I scrambled out. The car lurched forward, slowly, deliberately, towards the sentry booth. I watched, a phantom pain in my chest, as Lena's face, pale and distant, vanished behind the tinted glass. Each inch the car moved felt like a severance, a piece of my soul tearing away. This was it. Her freedom, purchased at a price I was still calculating. My gaze drifted to the small, unassuming USB drive clutched tight in my palm. It felt heavier than any vault door I had ever faced, a miniature universe of damning data extracted from the Blackwood vault. This wasn't merely leverage, it was a guillotine waiting for the blade to drop. My fingers, still trembling, dialed the familiar number. Then a low, sibilant voice, like stones grinding together, filled my ear. "You made it." Kai, a tenacious rat indeed. "Lena is gone," I stated, my voice devoid of inflection, a flat declaration of fact. "She's across the border. You will never see her again, and she will never owe you a single coin." A pause stretched, taut and dangerous. A bold claim. "It's all here, enough to bring down your entire operation, piece by agonizing piece." I could almost hear the gears turning in his reptilian mind, weighing the cost of my defiance against the certainty of his downfall. When I hoped sounded convincing. "Copies exist. They're on a timed release. If anything happens to me, if Lena is so much as inconvenienced, they go public. Every authority, every rival, every disgruntled associate. My world burns, serpent, and I won't even be around to watch the ashes." It was a bluff born of desperation, a gamble that my carefully constructed narrative would hold. But it was enough. The sheer scale of the information, the meticulous detail I had extracted, was his undoing. He knew I was capable of such a feat. He knew I didn't bluff when family was on the line. "Very well," he hissed, the sound a concession, a retreat. "The girl's debt is cleared. Consider it a gift, but remember, Kai, and I never forget." The line clicked dead. I stood there, the phone heavy in my hand, the weight of the digital evidence suddenly feeling lighter. It was over. For Lena, at least. Hours later, the sun, a pale, anemic disk, began its slow ascent, painting the eastern sky in bruised purples and grays. I was far from the border now, in a nondescript motel room, the kind of place that swallowed secrets whole. My phone buzzed, a single unfamiliar number. I answered, my heart a dull thud against my ribs. "Kai, Lena's voice, thin and reedy, but unmistakably hers. A wave of relief, so profound it almost buckled my knees, washed over me. Lena, are I safe? Yes, the driver, he got me to a place, a small house. He told me everything or enough. His voice wavered, then solidified. Kai, why I didn't have to. Yes, I did, I responded simply, closing my eyes, picturing her face, free from the shadow of the serpent. I ran my sister. There was no other way. A long silence stretched between us, filled with the unspoken words of sacrifice and love, of the choices we make for those we cherish. I knew she understood now, not just the danger, but the depth of my devotion, the stark reality of the life I had briefly re-entered to save her. What now? She wondered, her voice soft, tentative. I opened my eyes, gazing out the grimy window at the unfolding dawn. The world outside was waking, oblivious to the battles fought in its hidden corners. The old life, the one I had tried so hard to bury, had resurfaced with a vengeance. But it was different this time, truly disappear this time. I'll find a quiet corner of the world, Lena, and I'll build something new, something real. I felt a faint smile in his voice. I believe you, Kai, be safe. You too, little sister, I murmured, and then with a quiet click I ended the call. The USB drive still lay on the worn bedside table, a silent testament to the night's harrowing journey. I picked it up, turned it over in my fingers, then walked to the window. The rising sun caught its metallic glint, a tiny spark of light in the vast, indifferent world. With a decisive flick of my wrist, I sent it sailing. The evidence, the leverage, the ghost of my past all gone, swallowed by the currents. My reflection stared back at me from the glass, a man weathered by storm, etched with the lines of hard choices, but with a flicker of something new in his eyes. Not innocence, no. That was long lost, but purpose. A quiet, unyielding purpose. The world was vast, and the open road called.